Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news, interviews and fun for the WordPress community. Now, welcome your host, Nathan Wrigley. Hello there and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You've reached episode number 455, entitled Inside Podcasting's Evolution, Seth Goldstein on Trends, Tools, and Finding Your Audience. It was published on Thursday, the 5th of February, 2026. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and before we begin that chat with Seth about podcasting, a few bits of housekeeping. The first thing to say is that WP Builds is looking for some sponsors. If you are listening to this podcast, no doubt you're in the WordPress space. Well, it turns out that many other people also listen to this podcast, and they are in the WordPress space. So wouldn't it be a good idea if you had a product or a service, again, in the WordPress space, to stick it inside of this podcast? And in that way, you will be able to find an audience, hopefully share your messages. We call that sponsorship, and WP Builds is a really credible way to do that. If you would like to get your product or service out in front of our audience, head to wpbuilds.com/advertise to find out more. Alternatively, just send me an email, admin@wpbuilds.com, and we can get that conversation started. During the year 2026, I'm looking to onboard some new sponsors so that we can keep this whole enterprise going. Okay, the only other thing to mention is that if you didn't know already, we do a This Week in WordPress show. We do that every Monday. Unfortunately, we had a bit of a technical gremlin this past Monday. The platform that we use to do the streaming to all of the different places, so YouTube and so on, well, it completely collapsed. I've no idea why, but we had to pull that show. Sorry to the people who had nominated themselves as panelists, but also sorry to you for not producing that show. We did produce the newsletter. Anyway, all of that to say that if you want to join us Monday, 2 p.m. UK time, feel free to do that. The URL is the same every week, wpbuilds.com/live. You can find us there and join in the comments. We'll obviously have another podcast episode dropping next Thursday. So the cadence really is we do the live on a Monday. We push that out as a podcast episode on a Tuesday. And then every Thursday we drop an episode as well. Okay, there we go. That's all I've got for you this week in terms of housekeeping. So let's move on. Today I'm having a chat with Seth Goldstein. Now, Seth, just like me, is into podcasting. He's been doing it for many years. And so I've got Seth on the podcast today to chat about podcasting. And don't deny it, at some point in the past, you have thought to yourself, I should start a podcast. You have, haven't you? You know it's true. More or less everybody that I speak to has. Now, whether you've acted upon that, I don't know. Maybe you did and it was a failure. Maybe you did and it was a complete success. Maybe you did nothing. Well, Seth's here to have a conversation about why it's a good idea. So we talk about his past with podcasting. We talk about all of the modern technology stack for editing and all of the tools that you can use, why it's a great opportunity for a business to launch a podcast and get yourself into that whole podcasting landscape and get your messages out in that way. We talk about ways to engage the audience, the processes that you can involve yourself in. And of course, it goes without saying, we talk about why WordPress is a very credible place to put your podcast on, just like we do. I hope that you enjoy it. I am joined on the podcast by Seth Goldstein. Or is it Stein? Did I forget already?
No, it's Steve. Oh, you got it right.
Okay,
you got it right.
I'm going to leave that in because it's funnier.
It's absolutely fun. Leave it in.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, buddy. How's the weather across the pond? It's frigid here.
It's December, and so it's predictably bad. So we had a 2-minute foray into weather just before we hit record. And,
always the weather.
You at least get proper weather. Like where you are, it gets properly cold, and you get proper snow.
Oh, it's bone chilling.
No, we just get miserable. We just get like approximating cold, maybe like half an hour of snow once a year or something like that. So,
which is weird because you're farther north than
way
us.
further, but we have the Gulf Stream, so it keeps us warm. Yeah, we're much further.
It keeps you warm, but in the rain.
Yeah, we get lots of rain. And anyway, what the heck? We just totally went off on a tangent. Seth is here to talk about my favorite thing on the internet, which is podcasting. You may or may not have realized, dear listener, that I I do podcasts. And so does Seth. Seth's been doing it way longer than I have. Tell us how long you've been going in the podcasting space.
I've been doing it almost 16 years now. I started in 2010. Yeah. I had been listening to, Leo over at the Twit Network since 2005. And we were talking about Leo a little bit before the show started as well, and how his are at the Sunday Times, because they're 2 hours long. I don't know how they do it. He does these 2-hour-long episodes. I'm like, I can't do that. My show's around 30 minutes. I usually advise all my clients that they should be around 30 minutes because people's attention spans usually drift off after American-sized commute to work.
Yeah, sort of.
They drop off and they never come
30
back.
minutes, something like that. Okay, well, we'll try and get this one in under the wire in that case, under the 30-minute
wire. We'll
wire.
try, unless you get really chatty with
I'm
weather
quite chatty.
talk.
We could easily go off on all sorts of tangents. When you started, though, I've got the feeling that when you started, it was pretty unusual to be doing a podcast. I know the landscape.
It was the start of the second Renaissance. Okay. I usually call it 3 Renaissances, or Renaissance. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. The first one was 2005 to 2010. And from 2010 to about the pandemic. Then the third Renaissance is everyone and their mother starts doing podcasting. Yeah. And then we're in the third Renaissance now, where it's democratized. People are trying to figure it out. Brands are trying to figure it out. Brands are trying to figure out how to want to make money in their podcast, on their podcast, or around their podcast. And that's kind of where I come in with Podcast Mastery. Is I come in and I help brands and individuals kind of figure out how they want to go about podcasting. Not just throw stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, but have an actual plan on how to go about things.
So you've been doing it since, I'm going to do the maths here, very quick maths. 2025 minus 15 is 2010, something like that.
Yes,
I started in 2015, late 2015, 2016, something around there. At that point, it was reasonably easy to do in that you could download apps.
It started 2010 was Google Hangouts on air.
Yeah.
Google Plus. Google kind of democratized the ability of the podcast. It wasn't like hooking up wires and all that stuff. So that's when I got in. I got in when the democratization of podcasting started. It was easier to do a podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe not well, but you could record a video. I was doing video podcasts because I had the video, putting them up on YouTube for a while there because Hangouts on Air just kind of had the video component.
Yeah, nowadays the barrier is virtually zero, I would say, because you and I are recording on a SaaS app. You basically get an account, log in, click a couple of buttons, send somebody a link, and that's it. And then even on the back end of that, the editing side of it, the bit where you sort of finally finesse it and get it ready to go live, even that's a piece of cake now. You don't need a separate recording app.
You edit. You don't have to edit waveforms.
No, that's right.
You edit the text.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah. I use an app which you're no doubt familiar with called Descript, and there's a couple of rivals that do the sort of same thing. But nowadays you edit basically a text document. So when we've recorded this, Descript will consume the audio of my speaking, and it'll consume Seth's, and they'll be separate, and then it'll ask,
and they'll try and understand me. The transcripts and the Descript don't quite understand my Philadelphia
English. Oh, really?
English
That's
as well.
interesting. They get me.
No, you'll see when you look at it. It'll kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. I talk fast, and I slur a little bit, and it kind of messes up every now and then.
I see.
It's good enough. It's good enough to edit. And then I throw stuff into Cast Magic, which understands me perfectly.
Yeah, that's interesting. But the point being, you get like a text document and you edit the text. So you just delete portions of like paragraphs, and that just gets rid of that from the audio. What I'm trying to say, dear listener, is that if you wanted to start a podcast, the only barrier is basically time now. If you
having a plan.
Yeah, okay.
Having a plan.
There's more to it succeeding, but in terms of getting started, piece of cake. The technology is right there for you. But you
press record and start talking.
That's it. Basically, press record and start talking. But your whole thing, though, now is making this sort of like an integral part of somebody's business. So I began doing it just for giggles, basically. Just because it was a fun thing to do. it has definitely become much more, I'm doing air quotes now, like professional, and it's definitely become more of a thing that you might expect a business or a charity or an organization to be involved in. I'll give you a really good example. Like, I'm a member of this thing in the UK called English Heritage. It's an organization where, you know, they encourage people to go out and look at old monuments like castles and stately homes and things like that.
It's such a British
But
thing.
they've got a podcast, and it's really, really, really good. And you just think,
but encouraging people to look at benches.
Yeah,
It's
no,
such a British
it's
thing.
such a British thing. But it's
Go for a stroll and look at old stuff.
yeah, that's exactly it. But
you actually have old stuff
well,
in
that's
the
true.
UK. It's really old.
Really old. But it's really
Our stuff is like at most 300 years old.
Well, the point being though, it's really well done. It's obvious that they put some resource into it, because it's not like just sort of thrown together at the last minute. They've clearly scripted it. The point being, they must have decided we need to invest because this will give us an ROI. And I'm guessing that's your whole thing, right? There's an ROI of podcasting.
Yeah, it's figuring out, are you going to get sponsorship? I mean, you're not Mel Robbins, you're not Joe Rogan, and it's probably a good thing that you're neither of them. And you're not coming with more Joe Rogan than anybody else, but you're not coming in with a pre-existing audience. Even Nathan here, who everyone in the WordPress community knows, you have a small community you bring in, and they know you do podcasts here, podcasts there, podcasts over there, and you're a known quantity, but you're nothing personal. You're no Joe Rogan, thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully.
You're the Joe Rogan of WordPress. No. But the idea is that you gotta make money around your podcast, like your English Heritage, your British Heritage.
English Heritage, yeah.
English Heritage. They're making it as a brand play, they're branding themselves. They're talking about stuff, and then around the podcast they have tours. They have this. They have that. They have an app. They have this, and they pitch it on the show saying, "Hey, want to go see that old church down the street? We got the app for you." You know, and so they're building the ROI around the show, not necessarily in the show.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And a lot of people are like, I want to make money on my podcast, and I'm like, you're not gonna. Or if you do, you're gonna make a few bucks, a few pounds in your case, you know, that kind of thing.
That's kind of interesting because I attended this thing in London I think it was April. It's called the Podcast Show. It's pretty big.
Oh, you went to that? Yeah.
It's maybe 10,000 people, something like that. It's in a great big auditorium. It's kind of like one big exhibition space with lots of breakout rooms and things like that. And I went with a friend of mine, Dan Maybe, and we got a real intuition from that the bit which is interesting at the moment, which is hot in the podcast industry, is trying to inject ads successfully into, sponsor slots into podcasts. So some sort of automated way of putting ads in, but also that there's a ton of young people in the podcasting space who have got this kind of like YouTube, build it and they will come, I'm going to be rich quickly mentality. I don't quite know how that's going to work out for them, but there was a lot of people there with that.
I don't know. My kid talks about Roblox and has like 3,000 followers on YouTube, and I have no idea. I watch it and I don't get it.
No, but you don't need to get it because you're not the intended audience. But
I am not.
I was super surprised by how many people of a younger age were in that space. I thought it would be more old people, but I think it was 70%.
You said elderly. You almost said elderly.
Yeah. I think it was like 70% under 25. It felt, it really felt like that. Yeah. And the other piece that I really got an inkling of is just how seriously professional the industry has become. In other words,
it's really got,
if you wish to take it incredibly seriously and you wish to have all the bells and whistles, there is a complete backstop of organizations, publishing houses, hosting companies, ad networks, the whole lot. And I didn't really know that was there, so it was kind of curious.
Eye-opening.
But what in terms of your clients and the people that you deal with, are there any kind of industries or any niches where you feel podcasting is a solid home run?
I think a lot of service-based businesses can really benefit from podcasting. like they can be like coaches. I feel like coaches, business coaches, life coaches, financial coaches, they tend to have a lot of knowledge that they can share and throw people in. I've worked with a landscaper who talked about landscaping.
Huh.
It has a landscaping podcast.
Wow.
I mean, anyone I can work with. But I find like coaches tend to be the ones that really, or nonprofits are the ones that really want to be out there branding themselves with audio or video or both.
With the sort of coaching angle, I can see a complete through line with that. In other words, you can put like snippets of your coaching, whatever that is, course or masterclass or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I feel that you could drop bits of that in and sort of tease people into, come to my course and subscribe to me. For the non-profit bits,
exactly.
What's the deal there? Is it just more about like building up the brand and having some sort of public...
Building up the knowledge, talking about what they do, have their people on the podcast talk about their latest projects. They could talk to, let's say they're an arboretum for, I don't know where I came up with that, but an arboretum I'm just saying what's around here, an arboretum, like Morris Arboretum in Philadelphia. They could have like the latest exhibits they have at the Arboretum and talking to the groundskeepers or the curators and talking about what's going on at the Arboretum and having like a monthly podcast about happenings at the Arboretum kind of thing. And have to talk about that or talk about the latest, thing that's going on there and have it talk about that. So.
How do people in your experience discover unfamiliar podcasts? So the way I'll just tell you how it happens for me is that I generally, I don't know, I'll see a website and I'll see something of interest and I'll notice that they have got a podcast. It's in other words, I'm already there. I've kind of got to their property, their website or what have you, and then I discover about them. It's really rare that I stumble across something. Yeah.
Discovery is tough. I usually see it when I'm listening to another podcast and someone mentions something that they have a podcast. Yeah. And I'll go, it's still word of mouth. It's still very much word of mouth. There's direct, and then you have to find what directory they're on, and it's still a little wonky, But then there's also networks. I'm on the Marketing Podcast Network, and there's like 70 shows on there of marketing shows, and so we kind of cross-pollinate in there. So other people's audiences, other shows on that network, we have a little bug that we put in at the very beginning where they say, listen to this other show on the Marketing Podcast Network.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So networks are kind of key to kind of cross-pollinate and whatnot.
Yeah.
And also the social media, just talk about your podcast and social media. Say, hey, I just released a podcast, with so-and-so. Do a Blue Sky thread, God forbid an X thread, but do a Blue Sky thread or a Mastodon, toot thread where you can like talk about what you talked about and have a link at the bottom.
I find that,
this looks like a good episode.
Yeah, when I'm browsing on the internet, there's loads of sort of serendipity. I kind of follow links and follow other links and follow other links, and I end up.
And you have no idea how you got there. You're like, how did
I'm just in some sort of random place, and I don't really know how I got there, and so I often find things at random, which means that I may or may not wish to be there, but. My experience with podcasting is every single time somebody subscribes to your podcast, you've kind of got to treat them like 100 clicks or 1,000 clicks on a website because they really intended that. There's no accidental way to subscribe to a podcast. You don't by accident do it. So it's really intentional.
Unless you get a little click happy now with podcasts.
Okay.
But even then, if you get click, it's still intentional because it's not like a list of podcasts to follow all.
Yeah.
You still have to hit subscribe or join or whatever follow, whatever that term they're using now over Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. And then, not just that, then you've got to commit like some significant portion of your actual time to giving that thing a go. On a website, you might look at it, give it 4 seconds, no, I'm off, or commit some time to reading or whatever. But with a podcast, you've got to get like 10, 15 minutes in before you can make any judgment, usually, about whether this is good or bad. And so I think like it's more of an uphill struggle to get people into your podcast. Yeah. But once you've got people there, boy, it's like you've got a friend for life almost.
Oh my God, yeah. And if people like like they'll say on your show, they like the jolly British accent, and they like you're talking about certain topic, they'll come back. But the thing is, like most people have their top 7 podcasts that they listen to, during the week.
Oh, is that the number 7? That's interesting.
Well, it tends to be because 7 days in the week, and they listen to one a day, you would think. And I listen to probably like 15, 20 podcasts.
I do. I'm right with you
because I'm always doing something, and I much rather listen to a podcast than Spotify.
Yep.
I will go on Spotify when I run out of shows that I'm interested in listening to.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I think the biggest thing that's drawn me into podcasting, in terms of listening, not making them, but listening to other people's podcasts, is that I love the fact that you can just do other activities at the same time. So you could be vacuuming the house, or I don't know, mending the car, or whatever the heck it may be, and you can just be in this thing and kind of accidentally learning new stuff. I mean, maybe you're going to listen to a diet of entertainment podcast, and maybe just giggling and having a laugh is your main thing.
Exactly.
My podcast player is just full up of educational stuff, really, where people are talking about web development or AI or the tech industry or what have you, and somehow, without even concentrating on it, quite a lot of it goes in, and it's really curious. I know. Isn't that like, you don't try and there it is?
You pick up a factoid, and next time you're talking to your significant other, and you're like, blah, 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 blah. And like, where did you learn that? I'm like, I think on a podcast.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens to me. I will say something, and then they'll say, well, how do you know that? And I genuinely, most of the time,
you're like, somewhere.
Haven't a clue. But it was,
I was loading the boot, and I was listening to this.
Definitely, there was a podcast that I was listening to. Okay, so what exactly do you do for clients then? What is it that your business is involved in? How do you...
Yeah, so I do everything up to production. Okay. So I'll do everything like, help you sort out the cadence of your show, the structure of your show, the technology around your show, like the equipment you might want to get. I'll help you source the technology, meaning like, Squadcast, which we're talking on right now, or Riverside, or how you want to go about that. The podcast hosting, I have relationships with a bunch of hosts that, depending on what they want to do, we can figure that out. And then when it comes to production, I know a lot of people that like to do the production side of things. So I'll refer them out to those guys and gals and people to edit their shows if they don't want to edit it themselves. So, and I also have this, the SOPs and whatnot, and figure out how to go about, making things in a process, and figure out how to make it so you don't fizzle out after 7 episodes. A lot of shows, like 3 or 7 episodes, people fizzle because it's a lot of work. Unless you have a plan and SOP, standard operating procedure on how you go about doing your show. Because Entrepreneur's Enigma is 300 plus episodes now. I know WP Builds is 400 or 500 episodes now.
On one of the shows, but on the combined shows, it's about 800 or something like that now. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. And that's the thing is like, because you got into a system. You got into a system, you got into a process, you know how to go about it, and then you literally just show up and you go about it, and then you go from there.
Do you have a whole kind of like playbook then of different things? I mean, obviously, I don't want you to give away your secret sauce or anything, but there may be. Seth's making sort of scary face, and but nevertheless, are there sort of like some low hanging fruit, the kind of thing that you might advise people in terms of process or getting started or wherever you want to go with that?
The biggest thing I can say for anyone who is doing an interview show is have a tracker, even though it's a spreadsheet, and track your guests and when they're showing up in your show. And, so like the record date, the air date, when it's going to go live. And maybe if there's a gaffe in the show, if you're recording and not live streaming, if there's a gaffe in the show, you can make note of that so that when you go back and edit it, or your editor needs to go back and edit it, you can say, well, around this timestamp, Nathan dropped his banana on the floor.
I'm eating a banana currently.
And that's popped in my head, but exactly. Or he clipped his lips, he smacked his lips a little too loud eating a banana. So make sure you edit that part, or leave that part in, but make it louder or whatever.
Okay, yeah. So like an SOP, have it all written down, different bits and pieces. I did the whole thing by by basically messing things up periodically. You know,
I did that too. For 15 years, I've learned. I made so many mistakes.
Yeah. But that has kind of been fruitful for me. But I'm guessing if anybody tried to drop into my system, so I do the lot. From start to finish, it's all me basically. But I got this feeling that if I dropped anybody into my process at any point, it would just be a hot mess because it's all held together by duct tape. Or it's in my head. And and having it written down and a process from the outset, which I guess is what you help people with, means that it's more of a, what do they say? Like when you start a business, think about it as something which you can hand over in 3 years' time or something. You can delegate it. The same could be true of a podcast.
Something you can delegate is kind of very important because, you know, you might want to say, hey, I want to edit this show myself for a little while there. But then you want to, but then you're like, this is getting to be too much. I want to keep doing the show, but I need to delegate this out to a VA or an editor, and they need to know your process, or as you say, process.
We say process. Yeah,
exactly. So, and the idea is kind of sitting down with also the format of the show is how you want to do. Is it going to be a pontification show, just you talking to the wind? Is it going to be you and a co-host? Is it going to be you, a co-host, and a guest? Like, what's the format? And also what the cadence is. You know, is it going to be a weekly show? Is it going to be God forbid, a daily show? Is it going to be a twice monthly show? Or, you know, in the UK, you guys call stuff fortnightly, which I have no idea what fortnightly is.
It's every 14 days, 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks show. There you go. Fortnightly. And then that word is popped into everything in podcasting. It's fortnightly. And I'm like, what the hell is
now
that?
you know.
Now I know. The more you know. Exactly. Every 14 days, put a show out. Monthly, that kind of thing.
Yeah. This is obviously a WordPress podcast. Do you have that as part of your jigsaw puzzle for?
Oh God,
for everything.
Yeah. All of my stuff goes through WordPress.
And do you ever advise people? So, okay, dear listener, you probably don't know this. If you have a podcast, you need to put the audio somewhere. And you have this thing called a podcast host. And so it's like a WordPress host for your website, only they basically only upload audio. You can write a bit of text, upload an image, the bare essentials.
And they have crappy websites that go with it. They have crappy websites that come along with it. You don't want to use their sites.
That's my question. So usually they have a really super basic, ugly, horrible website.
Sometimes it serves a purpose to start off with. But like sometimes some shows are going to embed it on their corporate site. Some people are going to embed it on their dedicated podcast website. And that's where I can also come in. And I've done WordPress web design for 17 years now, even longer than podcasting. And the idea is that I can build them out a blog, or a podcast site using Nathan's handy Podcaster Plus plugin.
We weren't going to mention that, but okay.
I love it, but there's a bunch of out there as well. Like Second Line Themes has one out there. There's a bunch of plugins that you can suck in the RSS feed. I think you can even do it manually with a RSS plugin. I don't suggest doing that. Use a dedicated plugin for that. But WordPress just works out of the box. It's what I think Matt Mulway just says like 43% of the web runs on WordPress. Which is terrifying.
Yeah. And if you're in Japan, it's like 53.8 or something % of Japanese websites.
Exactly.
The point being, I guess, that discoverability in the year 2025, because there's so many people thinking that they can just make a podcast and it will suddenly have this giant audience. No. Yes, sure. If you're like Brad Pitt or, somebody like that, you've probably got a fighting chance of that happening, but everybody else, you're going to have to build it up slowly.
No, you have to find your niche. You got to find your niche. And find your core group. If you get 300 people listening to your show every episode or every month listening to your show, and you get like 5 or 6 people listening to your show on the day of the podcast, that's great. They're dedicated. They like your show. They're going to tell their friends about your show, and it's going to grow naturally. Slowly, but naturally. You're not going to be the next Joe Rogan, Brad Pitt, Mel Robbins, Tony Robbins, Ed Milet, any of those guys that have other... They're known for other things.
Yeah, right. That's the sort of...
Like Gary Vee, if Gary Vee can spin up a podcast and everyone knows about it within 5 minutes because it's Gary Vee.
Yeah, Yeah. I mean, I suppose the playing field has always
For better or
been,
for worse.
The playing field has never been level with that kind of thing. But
No.
but the WordPress website, a website that's got properly done SEO and what have you, that feels
That
like
helps you.
that's going to be your best friend, because if people are sort of going out on the web and they are using, I don't know, AI increasingly, or Google, or whatever it may be,
And they're looking for a WordPress podcast.
They've got a new hobby. They're interested in the
Yeah.
same thing as you are, and I don't know how much. Maybe this is something that you know something about. I don't know how much people go to Google and say podcast about X
all the time.
Yeah?
All the
Okay.
time. Yeah. They're searching for that first, probably.
Okay.
And then you want to come up there. So if you're like, I mean, I'm sure, Nathan, you come up with stuff like, WordPress podcast, building podcast,
Yeah.
WP building podcast. You're going to come up because your podcast is WP builds.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really where, so having that site and having some age to the site is going to help.
Yeah, so I think having a WordPress website is a really, really useful
Very
thing
important.
to have. I mean, obviously you can really obsess about it. What's the kind of stuff that you do for your clients in terms of the website? Do you sort of build it from scratch and design it?
Soup to nuts.
Yeah, the whole thing?
Soup to nuts. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the main company, Goldstein Media, does the website design, SEO, all that stuff. And then Podcast Masters is kind of an offshoot. They kind of is like, oh, this is something that people also want to do. Let me stupidly build another brand for it. So.
Yeah. It just occurs to me, we've been talking to you now for nearly half an hour, and we haven't figured out what your podcast is. Are you a bit like me? Do you have a few on the go?
I have three.
Yeah, I was going to
I
say
have three right now.
Yeah.
I have Entrepreneur's Enigma that doesn't have seasons, just keeps going.
Okay.
It's like on 305 episodes about the entrepreneurial journey. So that's Entrepreneur's Enigma. Then there's Digital Marketing Dive that I think today, where I'm recording the last episode of season 4. So season 4, episode 9, we're actually going to talk about podcasting.
Woo-hoo.
Exactly what we're talking about here when we're talking about Digital Marketing Dive. So it's going to be a duplicate kind of talking point. But like that's all about digital marketing. It's me and a co-host. We just kind of shoot the poop about that stuff. And then there's one that's kind of whenever I feel like it's called the Podcast Mastery Podcast. Kind of inside baseball. When I have something to say, I have, I've self-hosted it on a VPS. I use a, what's it called, Castopod as the software that serves up the podcast. So I really went in the weeds just to try out a federated. It federates to Mastodon, federates to all these Blue Sky, all that. Castopod.
Okay, I'm going to check that out. So
it's really neat, but you have to have it on a decent host.
Yeah.
Because bandwidth wise.
But you sort of
kind of
self-host that, and then it gets federated out on all the. Okay, well I'll check it out.
Federated out that way, and federated as an RSS too. So it's federate the podcast. Yeah.
Do you find that the ones where you do like a regular cadence, like once a week or once a month, and then you mentioned that there's this one where you sort of do it more ad hoc. Does the ad hoc one struggle to get the listeners, or does it?
That's more added for a blog post.
Okay.
On the podcast, that's more like if I have a thought. Some people know about it. I'll share it out. Say, hey, I had a thought. It's a 6-minute podcast, quick. Nothing. It doesn't go that long.
Okay.
Whereas Entrepreneur's Enigma goes about 15 to 30 minutes. Digital Marketing Dive, if me and my co-host Brian get into talking a lot, it goes about an hour. And at that point, we're both about to keel over and fall asleep. That's when we know when to attend the shows when I'm like, I can't talk anymore.
What's your do you have any thoughts on AI generated podcasts? And by that,
don't do it. Don't do it.
I was meaning like the full range. So at the minute, if you have, let's say for example, access to Google's Notebook LM. The
editor.
So that's kind of curious because what they're trying to do there is give you a podcast for only you. So the idea there is that you ask it a question.
But have you noticed with that they run out of the colloquialisms and they repeat them eventually?
It's almost unlistenable.
It's like MP. No, it's fun for a little bit. 'Cause it sounds like Kai Ryssdal on Marketplace for a little bit, like the back and forth banter. It's fun. But after a while, you're like, all right, I get it. The gimmick's over.
Right. And I was wondering what you thought about people who kind of recycle their blog posts and things like that into AI-generated podcasts. Because my guess is that you might get some people, but I doubt many people. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but
I guess if you have your blog post and at the top you say, listen to this blog post, and you don't want to read the blog post every single time, that's a good time to use AI to generate the podcast.
That feels like it's a different thing almost, because it's more of a like listening to the thing that I'm, I
Molly
can't read
White over citations needed. She reads her tomes, her really long blog posts. She reads them into the mic every time she puts on an issue. She reads the whole blog post in her voice.
Yeah.
And I've written her, I'm like, why don't you just put that in 11 Labs and have it duplicate your voice? Because people are coming for you for your newsletter / blog posts over at Ghost and all that stuff. But they're not, they're not necessarily, they don't need to always listen.
Yeah.
That's when they're doing something else. They want to continue reading, but they have to go do the dishes.
I think for me, what I'm looking for in a podcast, this is
it's personality.
Yeah, right. So, and also some kind of connection and some kind of expectation, like a through line of how they behave in each episode,
Yes.
So we were talking about the Intelligent Machines on the Twit network. They always have a panel. There's 3 of them. You often have a guest, but the point is they're like people that you know.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, and
because Leo and Jeff are the cranky old dudes, and then there's Paris, who's the young millennial zennial that is like kind of calls them old men and kind of keeps them center.
And you tune in
the banter. You tune for that.
Yeah, you tune in for
more
them.
than the topic.
Right, I agree, and it's the personality that you bring into it. So maybe there's something to be said for that as well. I guess you've got to have a certain personality. I don't know. Maybe if you're doing like difficult physics, then maybe it's okay to not have a personality, because difficult physics is just difficult physics.
Educational is different.
Yeah, but if you're going to do like entertainment or represent your brand, or
you want to be on your show.
Yeah.
You don't want to AI yourself.
No. But it would appear that in the year 2025, with everything moving the way it does at the moment, AI seems to be, I don't know, it's just like a quick fix.
We're in a bubble.
Yeah.
I think with AI. I think it's not going to burst like the financial bubble of 2008. It's not going to burst like the .com bubble of the early 2000s. I think it's definitely going to burst and settle down into a cadence. And I don't think it's going to be like, I don't think it's going to be exactly like the guy over at, what was it, the guy that Leo and Jeff and Paris interviewed that was still the fusion guy.
Oh, I've forgotten his name, but him.
There's a 50% chance we're all dead in like 5 years because of AI.
Let's
and I'm
hope
like,
not.
jeez. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think everything's going to settle and people are going to figure out how to use it properly.
But it does feel to me as if certainly for me and anybody that I know who consumes podcasts, it does feel like that authentic voice is like 90% of why you tune in. You obviously tune in for the content, but you also tune in for the
banter, the
banter. Yeah. And isn't it funny?
Don't edit out the mistakes.
You have to sort of, when you're setting up your podcast, you might find it difficult to have that banter because you feel like, it's not the professional thing that it should be. I love all that stuff. They're the bits.
People don't listen to professional.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have professional, but you can even like the rest is classified over on the Go Hanger network. That's a UK network. They talk about spycraft and all that stuff.
Okay.
And it's very buttoned up and stuff. It's a very cool podcast. It actually has made it into my top 7 because it's just so good. And they still have fun on the show, joking around. One's an ex-CIA analyst, one's a journalist. And they joke about the CIA. They joke about journalists. They joke about the friend of the pod. It's fun and it's enjoyable and it makes the half an hour go by nice.
Well, I would totally agree with that. My thing with every podcast that I listen to is it's the person that I'm tuning in for. And
AI can't replace that.
Well, but also like the content is kind of, sometimes it's a bit meh. So I'll kind of like get 10 minutes in and I'll think, no, not this one, but I'll, next.
There's certain podcasts I'll listen to the content like, what is it? Adam Curry and Dave Jones on the Podcasting 2.0 podcast. Okay. They're very much in the weeds about Podcasting 2.0. And I'll just put it on as background noise.
Yes.
Because Adam Curry is an ex-VJ from MTV. So he's funny. He's got the voice that talks like this. And then Dave Jones is from Alabama and he talks like this. And the banter is fun to listen to. and I'll tune in and out as I'm doing work.
Yeah. I think for me, my expectation is that podcasting is going nowhere. You know, I think with a lot of industry and media, there's a bit of fear about AI and jobs and replacement and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I feel that
Podcasting,
podcasting, you've got a fighting chance if you've got personality and you've got the ability to stick with it and keep going through the dark times as well as the good. Then it's all I can say is it's great. You get to in many cases just stay at home and record things into a mic, and
exactly.
I'm guessing that,
and it helps when it also helps when you have the jolly British accent.
Well, yeah, that's true. I can't deny that I have a British accent, but I don't know how much. I'd be curious.
It's very jolly.
Kind of curious to
jolly.
see though if I change my accent. Be curious to see if the listenership declined just because I was suddenly speaking with, I don't know, as you mentioned, an Alabama accent or an Australian accent or something like that.
Exactly.
Somehow
I think American podcast voices, the British accents have an upper hand, or the Queen's English accents.
Okay.
So Australian, Britain, Scottish. I mean, Danny. What's his face? Danny, he lives in Canada now, but he's Scottish.
Oh, I don't know him.
He's next to impossible to understand because he's Scottish. He's Scottish. He talks like this and doesn't open his mouth. But it's infectious.
And the nice thing as well is you don't have to be on the camera. You can just hide. You can be in your PJs.
You can eat a banana.
Yeah, you can be exactly. I was just snuck in banana. I do that all the time, and you're the first person that's ever mentioned that I'm actually.
Well, on the WP Weekly.
No, I sometimes have.
They call you with a banana in your hand.
That's right. They did. Yeah.
And you forgot you had a banana in your hand. You're like, wait, I have a banana in my hand.
I do often have a banana in my hand. Seth, we've reached the sweet spot for podcasting, which is about 40 minutes, something like that. So just before we say adieu and goodbye, where could we best reach you? What's the best places, whichever?
Yeah, so find me everywhere at social.sethgoldstein.me. That's where all my links are. You can also check out podcastmastery.coach. That's the coaching program. Podcastmastery.community is the community that I run with. It has masterminds and group coaching calls and stuff. So those are like the three big spots.
Okay, I will put those into the show notes. So if you head to wpbuilds.com, you search for the episode with Seth Goldstein, Stein, I don't know, Steen, then you should find it there because we have a WordPress website and it's good for discoverability. So Seth, thank you so much for chatting to me today. What a pleasure.
It's so much fun. So much fun. So much fun.
Okay, that's all we've got time for today. If you enjoyed that, head to wpbuilds.com. Search for episode number 455 and leave us a comment there. We would really love that. Once more, if you are in the WordPress space and you would like to get your product or services in front of a WordPress specific audience, hit us up, admin@wpbuilds.com, or go to wpbuilds.com/advertise to find out more. We'd love to get you and your messages in front of our audience. Okay, we will be back next week. So all I really need to do now is fade in some very, very cheesy music. Here it comes. And say, stay safe. Have a good week. Bye-bye for now.